When I was around 10 or 11 years old, 4th or 5th grade, something happened to me that I still can't explain. It was winter, and I went to school in the morning shift, so I usually came home much earlier than my parents. Since it got dark really early in winter, by the time I got home, the sky was already gloomy. That day, I got home around 2 p.m., turned on the TV, had something to eat, and killed time watching shows. A couple of hours passed, and then, out of nowhere, the electricity went out. Not just in our apartment, but in the entire neighborhood. Even the streetlights outside went dark. Suddenly, I was completely alone in pitch black. At first, I just sat there frozen. Then I slowly got up and tried to feel my way toward the kitchen. By memory, I managed to find a candle and a lighter, and I brought them back into the living room. I didn't want to sit anywhere else. Our apartment was small, but the living room felt the safest, maybe because it was the biggest space. So I lit the candle and sat on the couch. Pretty quickly, I got unbelievably bored. The only light in the whole apartment was that single candle, and the silence felt heavy. Out of boredom, I pulled out my old phone, a tiny Samsung Star, one of those early touchscreen phones, and started playing music I had downloaded. I even started twirling around the room to the music just to kill time. That's when it happened. Our living room had 2 doors, one leading to the hallway with the kitchen and bathroom, and another that led into my parents' bedroom. As I spun around in the dim glow of the candle, I saw the bedroom door slowly open. From the darkness inside, something stepped forward. It was a pure white silhouette. No hair, no facial features, no details at all. Just a glowing white figure, completely silent, standing there and looking straight at me. I froze in place. I remember staring at it completely shocked. It lasted maybe a second, maybe even less. But then, as calmly as if it were a person, the figure stepped back into the bedroom and closed the door behind it. I just stood there in total disbelief. My mind kept racing. If the door had just swung open by itself, that would have been one thing, but this wasn't that. Something came out, looked at me, and then went back in and shut the door. I was terrified. I immediately stopped the music, sat back down on the couch and didn't move. I didn't dare go near the door. Outside it was pitch black and freezing cold, and there was no light anywhere. I felt trapped. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep on the couch out of pure fear and exhaustion, because the next thing I remember is my mom waking me up when she got home. By then, the electricity was back. I still don't know what I saw that night. It's one of those childhood memories that stuck with me forever. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but it really happened, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. It was early summer in 2009. I was home alone with my son, who was about 1.5 years old. My mom had left with her boyfriend to spend the weekend at his parents' place, about 4 hours north. After waving them off, I went back inside and started doing laundry. My son was in the living room watching Nick Jr. Since it was summer, we had the front door open but locked, and the windows and back door opened to let in the breeze. I was switching laundry loads and folding clothes when I suddenly heard a woman's voice. I couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but then I heard clearly, "Hey, hey, hey you, hey." I froze and looked around and saw no one. I went into the living room, but it was empty, just me and my son. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was the TV, and went back to folding clothes. Then I heard it again. Hey you there." This time, I knew it wasn't coming from the TV. The voice seemed to be coming from one of the bedrooms. It didn't match the cartoon voices. It was a woman's voice, raspy and strained. Scared, but trying to be brave, I checked the rooms. Nothing. I wanted to convince myself it was just the TV, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. To feel safer, I asked my son to come help me with the laundry. He followed me to the back room, and together we finished folding and putting things away. After a while, it was close to his bedtime, so I got him ready, locked the front door, and closed all the windows. The evening was cool enough that we didn't need the AC anyway. Once he was asleep, I sat down at the computer to finish the laundry and browse online. That's when I began to hear voices again. This time, it wasn't just one, it was two. A man and a woman, talking low. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I knew it wasn't the TV. I checked the stairs, the rooms, the windows. Nothing. The house was empty. I even looked outside to see if it could be neighbors, kids, or someone walking by, but there was no one. I sat back down. After a few minutes, the voices started again. I whipped around, and they stopped instantly. I waited, turned back to the screen, and they started again. Frustrated and unnerved, I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself to check the basement. Empty. Back upstairs, I double-checked the house again. Still nothing. I tried to brush it off as paranoia and returned to the computer. But just minutes later, the voices came back, louder this time. Now I was really scared. The house was small and the stairs creaked like crazy. There was no way someone could have been inside without me knowing. I went to check on my son. He was sound asleep. Relieved, I started to head back when something caught my eye. In the entryway of the kitchen, a man was standing there. My heart jumped into my throat. I couldn't even scream. I just stared, frozen, my eyes moving from his shoes upward. He wore black shoes, light brown slacks, a black belt, a blue zip-up jacket left open, and a light blue button-down shirt tucked in. His skin was pale, and his light brown hair was neatly combed. He was a little taller than me, and then it hit me. He had no face. It wasn't shadowy or skeletal. It was just gone, smooth, blurry, like a cutout where a face should have been. The best way I can describe it is like one of those cardboard photo stands at carnivals with a hole for someone's head, except this was real, solid, standing in my kitchen. I sat there, wide-eyed, for several seconds. Then I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them again, he was gone. The voices stopped after that. I locked up the house again, checked on my son, and sat in the living room, too shaken to move. When my mom got home, I told her everything I saw. She looked shocked. The man I described matched her father, my grandfather, perfectly, except for the fact that he had no face. I've always assumed the voices I heard were him and my grandmother, but I'll never know what they were saying or why they were there. I think about this a couple of times a year, and I've tried looking it up, but I've never found anything quite like it. This happened a few years ago. One night, my now wife and I were driving back from Sonic. We lived in a very old, very small town in West Texas. It was raining. Not a downpour, just enough to leave puddles and make the streets slick. The kind of night where it would be strange to see anyone walking around. To make things even creepier, most of the roads had little to no street lighting, so entire stretches were swallowed in darkness. We were driving down one of those roads when it happened. As we went along, I looked to my right and saw what I can only describe as a faceless man. Not disfigured, just completely blank. His entire body was pale, almost glowing white, like a blur against the night. His arms looked impossibly long, nearly reaching the ground, and the way he moved was wrong. His arms swung wildly back and forth, unnaturally fast, almost like he was glitching in and out of reality. We weren't driving quickly, maybe 25 miles per hour since it was a residential area. I watched him long enough to actually wonder what I was seeing before he disappeared from view. For a brief second, I thought maybe someone was using a weed whacker or doing yard work, but of course, that made no sense. It was 9 p.m., raining, and pitch dark. I didn't say anything to my wife, convincing myself it was just my eyes playing tricks. Maybe the rain distorted the window, maybe it was just a shadow. I let it go. But a couple of hours later, out of nowhere, my wife asked me, "Did you see that man on the side of the road? The one with no face?" It's still the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. '40s here. Sane, married, job, house, car, sober, etc. Just for context. As a kid, I called it the bumblebee hands. It always came with the night terrors. Sometimes it was a faceless head at the end of a long hallway. Sometimes a figure outside my bedroom window staring up at me. Other times, hands would pop up over the side of my bed and then retract. Or I'd see a figure slowly walking from bedroom to bedroom in our hallway. But always, with those hands. I always chalked it up to being an over-imaginative kid. I was allowed to watch horror movies way too young, and my family life wasn't the best. I was the kind of kid who would jump from the bed to the hallway because I was convinced those hands were waiting underneath, ready to grab my ankles. I also had to keep my bedroom door cracked open at night. Even now, I still get night terrors from time to time. But as an adult, you wake up, brush it off, and move on. Over the years, I've learned how to fight back inside the dream. If something tries to mess with me, I mess with it right back. It doesn't always work, but nothing has ever been as terrifying as what happened when I was little. The scariest moment of my life happened when I was 8 years old. I swear, absolutely swear, I felt those fingers touch my head. Just one slow, deliberate stroke across my scalp coming from the headboard of my bed. I was wide awake. I froze, heart racing, drenched in sweat. I even pissed myself, too afraid to move. I lay there in my own urine for what felt like forever before finally bolting out of the room, screaming. Of course, I got yelled at and punished for wetting the bed, but after that, I slept with a lamp on for years. Was it just a child's imagination? Probably. Could it have been something real? I don't rule it out, but I never share this story with people in my personal life because they'd just laugh or call me crazy. And to me, it wasn't funny. At the time, it was real. And I never, ever want to feel that again. I've spoken about this story many times in my life, even though I'm still not exactly sure what occurred that night. This happened about 13 years ago when I was around 10 years old. My friends and I were always looking for trouble, and our favorite thing was making homemade boards to communicate with ghosts. We thought it would be fun to experience something scary, or at least we thought so at the time. Looking back, I'm not proud of what we did. It was extremely disrespectful. But keep in mind, I was only 10. A very small baby had just passed away, and only a few days later, the grandmother in the same house also died. Our childish minds thought 2 deaths in one house must mean we can finally talk to a ghost. So, we took our makeshift board and set it up a little ways from the house, far enough to not get caught, but close enough that we could still see the porch. We set everything up, held hands, closed our eyes, and tried to focus on ghosts. Then, out of nowhere, I had the urge to open my eyes. When I did, I saw a tall woman standing on the porch of the house. She wore a long black dress, her head bowed so I couldn't see her face. At first, I thought it was just the baby's mother. In my country, people wear black after a close relative dies, so it wasn't unusual. But then she lifted her head. My heart dropped. Every hair on my body stood on end. She had no face, just a blank void, but I could feel her staring directly at me. It was one of those moments where you're frozen in fear, unable to move, unable to scream. Finally, after what felt like forever, I let out the loudest, most terrified scream of my life. My friends immediately turned to look, and when they saw what I saw, they started screaming too. We bolted. We ran so fast we couldn't catch our breath until we made it to my house. I don't think I've ever been so terrified. When we finally calmed down, I asked my friends what they saw, and every single one of them described the same thing: a faceless woman staring at us. None of them knew what I had seen beforehand, but somehow we all saw the exact same thing. I'm not saying for sure it was a ghost. We were young, and maybe we wanted to see something so badly that our minds created it. But what I can't explain is how we all saw the same faceless woman standing there on that porch.